There's a story in the Old Testament, I think it's in the book of Genesis. The particular names are escaping me. I think it's Jacob and Esau. The basic story is this. One Jew has wronged another. And then he sees his brother or half-brother approaching him. His clan is approaching him. And he doesn't know if he means ill or not, and he fears being attacked. So what does he do? To ensure his survival, he divides his camp. He sends some of his people to the other camp as basically refugees, as defectors. Basically what these defectors do is they can influence the enemy camp, and if the enemy camp attacks the home camp and destroys it, at least some of those people will survive. If you have an environment where everyone's playing by individualist rules, and you come in working as a team, then you have a systematic advantage in that environment. The best way to prevent conflicts between different peoples, to the extent that that's possible, is for them to have their sovereign homelands. And lo and behold, Jews actually struggled for a very long time to create a sovereign Jewish homeland, namely Israel. It's very advantageous for them to have it both ways, right? They have their ethno-state, and they also live as a diaspora. Now, the ethno-state benefits from that because the diaspora is constantly meddling in the internal affairs of their host societies to support Israel. And that's especially true in the United States, where we have as many Jews living here as we have living in Israel, and where Israel gets billions of dollars every year in loans and just outright giveaways, and loans that'll never be paid back, so they're just giveaways anyway. And also where we're wasted trillions of dollars since 2003 in fighting wars in the Middle East that are dictated by Israeli strategic interests or strategic calculations. Jews are a distinct people, and they're loyal to one another, and that's all healthy and well and good. But if that's true, then we cannot give them citizenship in our societies and power in our societies and influence over our societies at the same time. And that is what the Jewish question is. The Jewish question really arose with the emancipation of Jewish communities in Europe. For a very long time, they were encapsulated, self-governing communities, and then they were quote-unquote emancipated by Napoleon. He was the great emancipator of Jewry. Well, as soon as they were emancipated and became citizens of the societies around them, it became a question. It was like, wait a second here. Not only are they citizens of our society and have all the rights of citizens in our society, but they're also, in fact, citizens of their own society, where they have their primary loyalty to other Jews all around the world, and even in our rival societies, even in our enemy societies, even in societies we're fighting wars against, right? Isn't there something weird about this? And isn't this an inherently unjust and disadvantageous relationship that we've instituted? And again, this goes back to the whole game theoretical issue. Just as a team strategy beats an individualistic strategy, right? If you got somebody with dual citizenship, basically that dual citizenship is a way.
Greg Johnson, a major figure in the alt-right, commenting on the Jewish question, the JQ as they call it. Now, I've been following Greg Johnson for a while because I study the alt-right, and Greg Johnson recently was exposed in the New York Times by a young Swede who went undercover with the alt-right for about a year. and recorded some hidden camera footage of Greg Johnson talking about mass deportation as his answer, quote unquote, to the Jewish question. There was another alt-writer who was exposed in that same expose, but I'm gonna take him in a separate video, just because I try to do these guys one video at a time, so you can get background and you can get sort of each figure defined. So I'm going to take the first half of that expose and discuss this idea of deportation and internment as like a solution to nationalist policy platforms, right? So what's very interesting about the relationship between modern day Nazis and Israel is that Israel, the state, not the Jewish people, Israel, the state, is structured somewhat. It is fallacious for someone to say that Israel is a legitimate ethno-state. It's not. It's the same thing with Japan. Japan is not an actual ethno-state. You have other ethnicities living legally inside of Israel. And I'm not in favor of the nationalist government. I'm not pro-Zionism, which is a form of Jewish nationalism. I'm not against the Jewish people. I don't even think that the American Jewish population particularly supports Zionism. At least living in New York, most of the Jewish friends and acquaintances that I have and have made throughout my life, they don't like Zionism. They don't like the idea of Israel being an exclusionary state somehow, or the situation of the Palestinians. Again, it might be because I live on one of the major coastal cities, but no, the Jewish population in my city is mostly liberal or progressive, and so on the subject of Greg Johnson being exposed in these undercover tapes that were taken. Every time the alt-right gets exposed to the general public, and I think it's really great that this is coming so soon after Charlottesville. It keeps on, each one of these little slips, each one of these times that the hidden power levels tactic fails, right? Meaning that someone gets into their innermost circle, where you get past all of the public relations, all of the soft, mushy language they use. And I would say even in this case, there's a little bit of, because he's being interviewed by someone that's not as hardcore as he is, I think that Greg Johnson still uses the idea of, this whole deporting the Jews thing has existed before. That's my thing. Except there was no place to send them when Hitler was around. So now it's the same disingenuous talking point from that era. The new Nazis just say, I believe in an ethno-state for everyone. So, I don't have anything against the Jewish people. I just want to send them back to their own homeland, which actually to some extent exists now. You can talk about how ethical or unethical the existence of Israel is as a colonial imperialist entity. But, according to the existing Jewish government there, the conservative government there, the reactionary government there, Israel is a homeland for Jewish people. So the alt-right is willing to like begrudgingly respect a fellow quasi-fascist government because it's the same talking point. You can just say, and I think this has a lot to do, and I don't want to step on any toes, but I will say, if we look at Jewish identity in the beginning of the 20th century, it was very similar to Muslim identity at the beginning of the 21st century. Jewish people at the beginning of the 20th century were viewed as not white, not assimilated, not capable of assimilating. I'm talking about in terms of North America and Western Europe. A lot of the talking points that you hear today about Muslims were levied at Jewish people. On my mother's side, Italian immigrants also got this whole. When they first got here, they were very similar to the way that people talk about Latinos today. The same kind of like idea of like they were all criminals and illegal immigrants and all that stuff. So at the beginning of the 20th century, I'm going to assert that culturally in America, many assimilated and integrated Jewish, Irish, and Italian people are now considered white in a way that they were not considered white a century ago. And that is to say the parameters of white are elastic. So in certain situations, Jewish people are white just based on complexion. But we're not talking about Hasidim. They're not accepted as fully integrated, so they're not accepted as, because, you know, in America, white, just like all over the world, white is such a nondescript, wishy-wash term composed of ethnicity, nationality, and actual physical race. So somebody could actually be olive-complected and Italian, olive-complected and Jewish, or darker than that. And as long as they are assimilated into white society, they'll be deemed a white person, because the litmus for whiteness in America was sown in the Constitution that basically anybody who's not black is white. These are not my opinions. These are things that I've observed by studying the history of social science and the shape of ethnic identity in North America and Western Europe over the last 120 years or so. So what's all this have to do with, quote-unquote, the Jewish question? The answer to the Jewish question was deportation for the classic Nazis, and today it's just a more polite form of deportation, which is to say, we're going to send them home. But I think that's horseshit. I think that when nationalist regimes talk about deporting people, even citizens, back to some place, it always turns into like a liquidation thing. The immigration centers and deportation programs will be inhumane prison camps that are used for like veiled slavery and stuff like that. There's a lot of white nationalists that talk about sending black Americans back to Africa. They're not going to waste the resources that it takes to create a deportation program where they can just kill you here and remove what they consider to be a problem. You know what I'm saying? So what we have now is a transformation of the Jewish question into the Muslim question, because these nationalist regimes are always obsessed with immigration. I think that's what unites the right, really. You know, when we talk about Charlottesville, is number one, myths about the threats and the volume of immigration into a country, and then trying to mobilize a political movement to turn against the immigrant population in supposedly civilized countries.